Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 12th of August 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. Coming up in the show, lawsuit brought against GameStop for deceptive trade-in practices. Mortal Kombat 9's PC sales are way above expectations, and the local currency switch on Xbox Live is about to occur. All this in the OC Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. A lawsuit has been brought against GameStop for supposed deceptive trade-in practices, and this specifically focuses on the idea of the online pass. GameStop had filed a motion to dismiss, however, it's been ruled by a federal judge in Camden that it will proceed, and that the plaintiffs in question do have the right to sue on the basis that the company deceived them into believing that a used game would in fact be cheaper. The suit claims that the addition of the online pass brings the overall price of a used game higher than most used titles, and this very much contradicts the claim on the receipt that a certain saving was actually made. John Farley, one of the plaintiffs in the case, alleges that the company gave him a receipt that said he saved $12 when he bought Need for Speed Hot Pursuit in 2011. However, he was forced to pay an additional fee in order to play the game online, which indicates that he did not, in fact, save that much at all. In that case, he would have actually saved around $2, considering the online pass for that game was $10. This is not, in fact, the first time that a suit of this type has been brought against GameStop. A similar case was brought last year and was ruled in favor of the plaintiff, and GameStop actually agreed at that point to advise customers that the actual downloads, i.e. the online pass, was not free. The lawsuit also claims that GameStop aggressively markets the purchase of used games as a way for consumers to save money compared to the purchase of a new copy of the same game. Well, they're not wrong there, they absolutely do. We've discussed this before when it came down to the ethics of used games or anything along those lines. The thing about it is that GameStop doesn't just put them up on the shelf and let it slide, yeah? They will try and sell you a used copy at the point of sale if they have one available. That's the key difference there. And if it does come down to saying, yeah, you can save some money here, and then not mentioning the whole online pass thing, then actually, yes, that is very much deceptive. I'm kind of shocked, honestly, that GameStop doesn't alert people of that. It has been a big deal for the longest time. Obviously, it's becoming less of a deal now with many companies rescinding the online pass policy, but quite frankly, the fact that stores were not mentioning this whatsoever is beyond ridiculous. The packaging is original, yeah, and it does say on the back it includes this, and a lot of that packaging doesn't necessarily mention the fact that it only applies to the first user. It is up to GameStop once they have taken that copy to actually let people know. Essentially, by trading in the game, you are altering its original form by taking away that online pass. So in doing so, I believe the responsibility would fall upon the actual store itself to let people know that the used copy is not in fact identical. And I can tell you for a fact from having worked with Game in the past that many efforts are made to stress to the consumer that it's just the same, yeah? It's an identical product, which lately has not actually been true with the online pass system. So yeah, I do hope that this goes through, and I very much hope that it wins, even though it's kind of pointless at this stage, considering we are seeing many companies move away from online pass as a whole. It would just be nice for games retailers to not be aggressively pushing used, and not be aggressively misleading people in the process. You know, if you want to argue for the ethics of used games, that's fine. You know, it's a personal opinion, that's all good. But you can't argue that it's okay to mislead consumers. That is not okay. NetherRealm Studios producer Ed Boon has announced that the PC version of Mortal Kombat 9 has sold way above expectations in response to a question given to him on Twitter. The game originally came out in 2011, meaning that there was a full 2-year delay between the release on PC versus the original console release, which does mean that it's quite surprising that the game's actually doing well at all. Generally speaking, when you delay a product that much, you usually lose interest from people, but it's also kind of hard to say as to what Ed Boon's expectations actually were in the first place. It may be for that very reason that the guys over at NetherRealm didn't have high expectations whatsoever as a direct result. Fighting game site Event Hubs points out that there was a statement made by Namco Bandai's Katsuhiro Harada, and he claimed that PC gamers were not in fact interested in fighting games. He said specifically, the most important thing equals it seems that many of PC Gamer is not interested in fighting game. With the upcoming release of Skullgirls, as well as the leaked announcement for King of the Fighters 13, as well as the Ultra DLC for Street Fighter 4, things are actually looking rather rosy on the PC gaming front when it comes to fighting games, and this is most assuredly a massive difference compared to what we saw a few years ago. One hopes that the success of this title would in fact convince NetherRealm to bring Injustice over to the PC platform as well, although as of yet there has been no announcement to that effect. So what is the current state of fighting games on PC? If we look at it, then we see that we've got NetherRealm having brought one game over, but hasn't really committed to support yet. If they had, they'd have brought Injustice over. We'll see if that still happens. We have Capcom having released several fighting games now. We had Street Fighter 4, we missed Super, we got Arcade, and then we also got Street Fighter X Tekken. And then we also have the guys behind Skullgirls, and we've got the guys behind King of the Fighters, that being SNK. So the question is, who are we missing? Well, if we look at the other major franchises, we've got Smash, which we're never getting. We've got Dead or Alive, which is published by Tecmo. We don't have support from them as of yet. And we're also missing support from Namco Bandai, which means that we don't get a hold of the Tekken series anytime soon. Capcom has not committed fully to the platform, that is abundantly clear, because as you can see, we do not have Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 either. They've kind of been dipping their toes in the water over the past couple of years, but unfortunately they have suffered from fairly dire matchmaking systems and an obsession with games for Windows Live, which everyone absolutely hated. It would seem that they are still releasing games on PC, but I have to wonder whether or not the return ended up being particularly good for them, considering the addition of games for Windows Live is very much an albatross around the neck of pretty much any game that comes out on PC. That said, they have released 3 fighting games now on PC over the last few years. Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 4 Arcade, and Street Fighter X Tekken. So that does indicate to me that there's obviously something going on there, and that they seem to be fairly happy with the way they're going. Let's be frank, porting a game is not as expensive as coming out with a brand new one for a particular platform. And really, when you're talking about PC, you're talking about a platform that can use any controller. So the actual changes you need to make for PC are fairly limited. The kind of people that would be playing on a PC would be using a fight stick, would be using a controller to begin with, and it's really down to the fact that you don't need to worry about the mouse. A keyboard is very easily adapted to fighting games, surprisingly so. I knew a bunch of people that did play on keyboards, and they were pretty damn good. They were cheesy as hell. They used to play Zangief, and they would actually line up all of the buttons so that they could just kind of roll their finger along for a full 360 and get all sorts of nonsense spinning pile driver crap going on. But at the end of the day, what works, works, right? And there are certain advantages to having a fight stick. There are certain advantages to using a keyboard, as well as disadvantages for both of those things. I like to use a Sega Saturn controller when I play Shoto characters in Street Fighter 4, but I will happily use a fight stick when I am playing characters in Mortal Kombat, because they just play differently. They have a different kind of moveset, and I find it easier to use one particular device. I think once you get past that, and then you look at the optimization of it, and you try and figure out, well, can I keep this game running at a consistent 60 frames per second? Because if I can't, then all the timings go horribly wrong. Then you're probably fine. My concern right now really is the netcode and the matchmaking. We have had a bunch of games released that required games for Windows Live, and they were just not very good at what they did. Skullgirls is going to be using GGPO, which, in my understanding, is just a hell of a lot better when it comes to dealing with latency. And from what I've played of Skullgirls Online, yeah, it actually does seem to work pretty damn well. The question is, will other games actually use it? We certainly do not see that with Mortal Kombat, and MK does suffer from lag and matchmaking issues online. Admittedly, it also suffered from those on the console as well. It seems that NetherRealm is just not really either willing or able to actually fix those problems. And honestly, the biggest thing when it comes down to selling a fighting game on PC is that those people are most likely going to be playing online, versus a console where you are more likely to have your friends over and sit on the couch playing. It's just a social reality when it comes to these kind of games, more so than anything else. You don't buy a PC to play fighting games. and you don't generally have people over to play on your PC while you're also there, even though it's entirely possible. It's just not set up that way. My desk, my room is not set up for multiple people playing in it. Most people's offices and PC rooms are not set up that way. So as a direct result, you have got to focus on that netcode, and you've got to focus on that matchmaking, because if you're not able to do either of those things, then you cut out a large portion of what's attractive of that game to the demographic that you're looking at. If you're able to do that optimization on both the performance side of things and on the netcode side of things, then there's no reason not to release a fighting game on PC. My hope is that the sales of this actually do encourage NetherRealm to bring Injustice and future titles to the platform, as well as other companies, because there is now a clear proven demand for the product, so there's no reason not to bring it over. And finally, Microsoft has made its transition from Microsoft Points to real money. They announced this earlier this year, claiming that yes, they would be allowing you to spend real money instead of virtual fake internet dollars on stuff available on the Xbox 360 as well as the Xbox One. The latest 360 system update will make that transition. And this means that any future points redeemed on the system will be redeemed for an equivalent amount of real currency that they claim will be the same or greater than what you would have received in the first place. This also applies to your current balance. However, bear in mind that if you are to add any currency on with Microsoft Points cards, it's going to expire on June the 1st, 2015. Why? I have no bloody idea. I cannot figure that one out to save my life. It's a very, very strange little requirement indeed. Yeah, that's going to disappear in like 2 years, but why? There's got to be a reason for that, surely. I just can't for the life of me think of what it is. Whatever the case, most of the response to this has been very positive, and I can definitely see why. Although, I could certainly also see there being a possibility that this may screw over certain regions. Now, obviously right now they're saying, oh, it will be the same or greater than the retail value of this and so on and so forth, but that's certainly not to say that that won't change at a later date. And I also have to wonder why exactly they made the change in the first place. I have this very sneaking suspicion, that it may have been something to do with the ability to buy points cards from different regions and actually add them on. Now, if you were to buy EU points cards, that wouldn't work in the US, for instance, but points values can differ in certain EU countries. We've seen that happen before, so there is the possibility that they decided to actually do this in order to shut down this kind of grey market trading on MS points. Whatever the case, the system in general is better simply because it's actually more transparent. It's been made abundantly clear in the past that the system made it very difficult to spend all of your points at once. The denominations that it gave you were not very useful at the time. I remember those 2,100 point cards. Like, what am I going to do with this? That's a bunch of points left over. So essentially things are costing slightly more, and that currency is kind of remaining in the Microsoft system, and I'm unable to spend it because it's not a large enough denomination to spend on anything useful. And that kind of annoying setup has been used by other companies, including Riot, for instance, on Riot Points, making it, again, very difficult to actually spend any of the individual denominations that they demand you take. That it's only beneficial to the company that has the fake currency to actually have this fake currency exist. There is no benefit whatsoever to the consumer aside from this whole grey market thing, which, as far as I'm concerned, was fairly few and far between anyway. So it's a good thing that they're moving over. It's a good thing that they're being a little bit more transparent with this kind of stuff. And hopefully it should mean that some of the regional disparity is put to rest. But honestly, I'm not entirely sure if that will be the case. It's entirely possible that this will result in games being more expensive in certain regions versus what we saw in the first place. But there's also the possibility that it will remain exactly the same, because at the end of the day, those MS points cards cost different things in different regions anyway, so the ability to gouge one region over another was still there in the first place. So, you know, I think it's less of a big deal than anyone's really making it out to be. It could end up just being exactly the same, but for the most part, it does seem to be a change for the positive. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Before I go, I would like to remind you that the Co-optional podcast is currently available. The episode 3 is over on youtube.com/Polaris. That is youtube.com/Polaris. It is there. No, we didn't miss it. It's buried under a bunch of videos, annoyingly enough, but it is there, so please do go and watch that episode. It was a little bit of fun. The last hour went somewhat off the rails, to say the least, but hey, never mind. And I'd like to give you the OC Remix track of the day, if you don't mind, and I'm sure you don't mind, because it's a wonderful thing. Of course it's a wonderful thing. What else could it possibly be? Nothing better than a remix which could be considered worryingly close to porn jazz. In this case, a remix by Dr. Velvet and Halo Zero of something from SimCity 2000. Not a title that does get remixed all that much, and that's unfortunate because it's actually got a great soundtrack. Most of the SimCity games did, and only one artist has attempted a remix, and it is of the track Tax and Money. Goes by the name of SimFunkadelic, which is exactly what you would expect. Fairly good description of this particular track. It's raunchy in all the right ways, let's just put it that way. My name's been TotalBiscuit, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.